There is a second Delta Force. Most Americans have never heard of it, and that is strange, because it operates in their own country, in their own cities, and it exists for one reason. The real Delta Force is forbidden by law from setting foot on American soil to do its job. So the government built a copy. It wears a badge instead of a foreign uniform. It answers to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And on American ground, when the worst happens, it is the one that goes in, not Delta. This is the story of the unit the FBI built to be its own Delta Force, and the strange old law that made it necessary. To understand why it had to exist, you have to understand a wall that most people do not even know is there. It is a law that goes all the way back to 1878, and it is called the Posse Comitatus Act. In plain language, it forbids the federal military from acting as a domestic police force. Soldiers cannot make arrests inside the United States. They cannot search your home, seize your property, or take you into custody. That is not a soldier's job, and the law makes it a crime for the military to try. The men who wrote it were reacting to the abuses of an earlier era, but the principle they set down has held for almost 150 years. In America, the Army does not police the people. Now follow that logic to its uncomfortable conclusion. Delta Force is a military unit. That means the single most capable hostage rescue force the nation possesses is legally barred from rescuing hostages inside its own borders. If terrorists seize a building in Chicago, if a hijacked airliner sits on a runway in Los Angeles, if a barricaded gunman is holding a room full of people in Atlanta, you cannot simply send in Delta. The law says no. For a long time, that left a hole in the middle of American security so large you could drive a truck through it. The country had one of the best counterterrorism units on Earth, and it could not legally use it at home. The threat that exposed that hole was already visible to anyone paying attention. In 1972, the world had watched terrorists take Israeli athletes hostage at the Munich Olympics, and watched the rescue attempt fail. That nightmare was the reason America eventually built Delta Force in the first place. But Delta could only answer the threat overseas. As the years passed and the danger of terrorism on American soil grew, and with the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games coming into view, a hard question sat unanswered. If something like Munich happened here, at home, who would stop it? The honest answer, for years, was nobody with the right training. It was not that American police were weak. Local departments had brave, capable officers, and the FBI already had agents who could win a gunfight. But a coordinated terrorist assault, a hijacked aircraft full of civilians, a team of attackers who had trained for months, was a different order of problem. It called for men who did almost nothing else but rehearse that exact nightmare, thousands of hours a year, until the response was pure instinct. That was the specific gap. Not courage and not numbers, but a dedicated top-tier unit that lived and breathed the hostage rescue mission the way Delta did. The nation had that unit. It simply was not allowed to send it home. Somebody with the authority to fix it finally saw the problem up close, and the moment is documented. In the early 1980s, the director of the FBI was a man named William Webster, and he was invited to watch a Delta Force demonstration. He saw what these operators could do, the precision, the speed, the ability to take down a target and bring hostages out alive, and he came away with a single uncomfortable thought. The FBI had nothing like this. No civilian law enforcement agency in the country did. The men whose job it was to protect Americans at home simply did not have the tools, and the clock was running. So the FBI built them. If you find it fascinating that America needed two versions of its deadliest unit, one for abroad and one for home, subscribe to War Code, because the way they built the second one, and who taught them, is the part that turns this from a legal footnote into a real story. The man given the job was an FBI agent named Danny Coulson, and the unit he created was called the Hostage Rescue Team. It became operational in the summer of 1983, the FBI's first full-time tactical unit, built for exactly the crises the military was not allowed to touch. And here is the detail that makes it remarkable. The FBI did not figure this out alone. To learn how to build a top-tier unit, they went to the source. The new team traveled to Fort Bragg, the home of Delta Force, and trained alongside the very operators they were being created to stand in for on home soil. Delta taught its own domestic understudy. The student was built in the image of the master, by the master. That is why, inside the community, the hostage rescue team earned a nickname that says everything: the Domestic Delta. Getting into it is its own ordeal. The team does not take just anyone with a badge and a good pistol score. Candidates come from the ranks of experienced FBI agents, and they face a brutal selection followed by a long new operator training course before they earn a place on the team. Many do not make it. The men who do are expected to master the same close-quarters skills as their military cousins, to shoot to a standard most people cannot imagine, and to keep a cool head in the exact moments that break other men. They are based at Quantico, Virginia, as part of the Bureau's crisis response arm, and they hold themselves at a readiness that lets them move toward an emergency anywhere in the country on a few hours' notice. Since it stood up, the team has deployed many hundreds of times to the most dangerous incidents the nation produces. On paper, the two units look almost like twins. Both are trained to the highest level in close-quarters battle, the art of fighting inside rooms and hallways where a fraction of a second decides who lives. Both can put a precision rifle shot on a distant target. Both drill endlessly for the hostage scenario, the aircraft, the building, the bus, the situation where innocent people and armed enemies are tangled together in the same space, and the margin for error is zero. If you watch them work through a shoot house, you might struggle to tell them apart. But they are not twins, and the difference is the most important thing in this entire story. It comes down to one word: handcuffs. A military unit exists to destroy an enemy. When Delta goes through a door in a foreign country, the men on the other side are combatants, and the mission is to eliminate the threat. The FBI's hostage rescue team lives under a completely different set of rules, because it operates inside the American legal system. The people it confronts are not enemy combatants. They are suspects, and suspects have rights. They are supposed to be arrested, not eliminated. Evidence has to be preserved. A chain of custody has to hold. Someday, in many of these cases, there will be a courtroom, a defense attorney, and a jury, and everything the team did will be examined in the cold light of the law. Think about what that actually demands. The hostage rescue team has to be every bit as fast and as deadly as Delta Force, capable of ending a lethal threat in an instant, and at the very same time it has to be able to stop, to take a man alive, to make an arrest under the most extreme pressure imaginable. It fights with one hand tied behind its back, not because it is less skilled, but because the law requires a restraint the battlefield never does. In a strange way, that makes the job harder. Anyone can be trained to pull a trigger. It takes a rarer kind of discipline to be fully prepared to pull it, and then, in the same breath, to choose not to, because the situation calls for a set of handcuffs instead of a body bag. And the stakes of getting that choice wrong are personal, in a way a soldier rarely faces. A member of the military who uses force in combat is operating under the rules of war. A federal agent who uses deadly force on American soil is operating under the law of the land, and if a shooting is found to be unjustified, that agent can be investigated, sued, and even prosecuted. The same trigger pull that is lawful for a soldier overseas can end a lawman's career and freedom at home. So the hostage rescue team does not just carry the physical burden of the work, it carries a legal burden on every single operation. The knowledge that the line between hero and defendant can be a matter of one decision made in a fraction of a second. Nowhere is that discipline clearer than in the team's snipers. A hostage rescue team sniper may lie motionless for hours, sometimes for days, watching a single window through a rifle scope, holding a life in the crosshairs and waiting. He does not fire because he can. He fires only when a strict set of conditions is met and the order is given, and until that instant he must simply wait, absorbing exhaustion and cold and boredom without ever letting his focus slip, because the one moment he is there for might last less than a second, and even then, he is not shooting an enemy soldier. He is stopping an American suspect from killing a hostage, an act that will be picked apart afterward in exhaustive legal detail. That is a weight most people never consider. The patience to do nothing, perfectly, for as long as it takes, and then to act flawlessly the instant it finally matters. There is a narrow set of exceptions to that old law, ways the military can lend certain support to civilian authorities, sharing expertise or specialized equipment in extreme cases. But the core rule never bends. The military does not run the operation, does not make the arrests, does not command the scene. And that brings us to the part that would surprise most people. The part that flips the usual pecking order on its head. We tend to assume Delta Force sits at the very top, that nothing outranks it. On foreign soil, that is close to true. But on American soil, the badge outranks the beret. If a crisis at home ever demanded these skills, the law makes the FBI the lead and the military the support. Delta does not sweep in and take over an American hostage scene. It cannot. The hostage rescue team owns that ground, by law, and anyone in uniform who showed up would be there to assist the men with the badges, not to command them. Inside the borders of the United States, the copy is in charge, and the original has to stand back. The bond with the original never fully broke either. Over the decades, the two units have continued to cross paths, training together for the scenario that keeps every planner awake at night, a terrorist attack on American soil so large that the FBI's team and the military's specialists might have to work the same catastrophe at once. They rehearse how that handoff would work, who leads, who supports, and how the badge and the beret can share the same ground without tripping over the very law that separates them. It is a quiet, constant preparation for a day nobody wants to see. And it exists only because two units that are nearly identical in skill are held apart by a legal line, and someone has to make certain that, if the worst ever comes, that line does not end up costing lives. So consider how carefully the whole thing has been arranged. A law from 1878 draws a hard line between the soldier and the citizen and says the army may never police the people. That line leaves the nation exposed to a kind of threat the army is uniquely built to stop. So the FBI creates a mirror image of Delta Force, trained by Delta itself, that can do the same work while staying on the right side of that line. And then, on home ground, that mirror image is handed the authority the original can never have. Two units, nearly identical in skill, separated by a single question: whose soil are we standing on? The next time you hear about a tense standoff ending without a massacre, a hostage situation resolved, an armed and dangerous suspect taken alive when everyone expected a bloodbath, understand that there may have been a team on the scene that trained at the same schoolhouse as the most feared unit in the American military, and then learned the far harder lesson on top of it: how to be that lethal and still bring the man out in handcuffs. That is the secret Delta Force the FBI built, hidden in plain sight, in your own country, because the real one was never allowed to come home. It may be the most American answer imaginable to an impossible problem. Faced with a law it refused to break, the country did not bend the rule to fit the threat. It built an entire new unit to honor it. If you want more of the hidden architecture behind America's most secretive units, subscribe to War Code, and I will see you on the next one.